The day negotiations failed. Humanity rose and the galaxy feared Part 1. The air inside the grand chamber of Viridia Prime was cold, not from temperature, but from tension. 17 alien species sat in high-backed chairs arranged in a wide circle, their forms as varied as the stars they came from. Some had smooth, glassy skin that shimmered under the soft lights. Others wore heavy armor, their eyes hidden behind dark visors. At the center of it all stood a human, tall, weary, but unbent. His name was Elias Rourke, and he carried the weight of Earth on his shoulders. For 3 long cycles, the Galactic Concord had debated humanity's place in the galaxy. The Concord was old, older than human history, older than cities, older than written language. They saw themselves as keepers of peace, order, and balance, and to them, humanity was a spark in dry grass, bright, fast, and dangerous. Now, the final offer had been laid out. Corvel, the Velnari delegate, rose from his seat. He was twice the height of a man, his body covered in overlapping plates of black chitin that clicked softly as he moved. His voice, translated through the chamber's universal field, was calm but firm. Earth and its colonies will surrender all holdings beyond the Sol system. All military vessels will be decommissioned. Human leadership will accept Concord oversight in matters of expansion, defense, and diplomacy. Refusal will be seen as an act of war. Silence followed. Not the kind of silence that waits, it was the silence of a held breath, of a galaxy watching to see if a child would finally kneel. Rourke did not move. He simply stood, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the polished floor. He had expected this. Not the words, perhaps, but the spirit behind them. The Concord had never truly wanted peace. They wanted control. They feared what they did not understand, and humanity, with its rapid growth, its strange mix of cruelty and compassion, its willingness to die for ideas, was impossible to predict. A soft chime sounded in Rourke's earpiece. A private channel, encrypted beyond even Concord detection. It was Earth Central. "They've run simulations," came the voice of Director Hale, calm but urgent. "They're not bluffing. Their fleet near the Oort cloud has powered up primary weapons. They're targeting the Helios freighter, civilian vessel, no weapons, carrying food and medical supplies to Titan colony." Rourke's jaw tightened. So this was how it would be. Offer peace with one hand, aim a gun with the other. He looked up. His eyes met Corvel's, deep, multifaceted, unreadable. Around them, delegates shifted. Some leaned forward. Others turned away as if already mourning what was to come. Rourke stepped forward. The chamber's gravity field adjusted slightly to his movement, but he barely noticed. He walked to the center table where a small orb of blue crystal rested on a silver stand. The orb of accord, a symbol used for centuries to seal treaties. To break it was to reject peace forever. No one spoke. No one moved. Rourke reached out. His fingers closed around the orb. It was cool, smooth, humming faintly with stored energy. For a moment he thought of Earth, of children playing in parks, of farmers tending fields under open skies, of scientists dreaming of stars not as threats, but as homes. Then he lifted it and dropped it. The orb struck the floor with a sharp crack. Blue light flared, then died. Shards skittered across the polished surface like frozen tears. Gasps rose from the chamber. A few delegates stood. Corvel did not move, but his plates flared outward slightly, a Velnari sign of shock. Before anyone could speak, red lights flashed along the walls. A deep, pulsing alarm filled the room. The universal field translated it instantly. Priority alert: Concord warship Vengeance has engaged hostile action. Target: Helios freighter. Location: Oort cloud perimeter. The room erupted. Delegates shouted in a dozen languages. Security drones whirred to life, hovering near exits. Corvel turned slowly toward Rourke, his voice low, dangerous. "You chose war." Rourke met his gaze. "No," he said quietly. "You did. The moment you pointed your guns at unarmed civilians, you chose war. We only chose to answer." He turned and walked toward the human delegation's exit. His steps were steady. Behind him, chaos unfolded, orders being shouted, emergency protocols activating, some species already calling for immediate fleet mobilization. Outside the chamber, in the quiet corridor lined with glowing vines native to Viridia, Rourke paused. He tapped his earpiece. "Hale." "They fired." "I know," she replied. "Helios is gone." All hands lost. Rourke closed his eyes. 23 souls. Gone in an instant. Not soldiers, just people trying to keep a colony alive. "What's our status?" he asked. "Fleet Command is on standby. All colonies have received the black flag signal. Civilian ships are going dark. Military assets are moving to pre-planned positions. Project Mimir is online." Rourke nodded. Project Mimir, the AI that had spent 10 years learning every Concorde ship design, every command structure, every weakness. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a ghost in their machine, and the Resolute? "Captain Lin reports all systems green. She's holding position in the Kuiper Belt, waiting for your word." Rourke looked out a nearby viewport. Beyond the station's curved glass, stars glittered in perfect silence. Somewhere out there, the conquered fleet was gathering. They thought this would be easy. A quick strike, a broken species, a lesson taught. They didn't know what humanity had become. "We don't start wars," Rourke said softly, more to himself than to Hale. "But when they come, we finish them." He turned away from the stars and walked down the corridor. No guards followed him. No fanfare. Just a man in a simple gray suit heading back to his ship. Behind him, on Viridia Prime, the Concorde began issuing orders for full-scale invasion. They mobilized thousands of warships. They activated ancient defense pacts. They prepared to crush the upstart humans before they could become a true threat. What they didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for a long time. Not with rage. Not with blind fury, but with silence. With patience. With plans hidden inside plans. As Rourke boarded the shuttle that would take him back to the UNS Horizon, he glanced once more at the station. It looked peaceful, calm, like nothing had changed. But everything had. The negotiations had failed. And now, humanity would rise, not as beggars, not as subjects, but as equals, forged in fire, hardened by loss, and ready to show the galaxy what happens when you push a species too far. The shuttle lifted off. Below, the Concorde delegates argued over strategy, unaware that their first strike had already played into human hands, unaware that the real war had not yet begun, unaware that fear was no longer theirs to give, it was now theirs to feel. The day negotiations failed. Humanity rose, and the galaxy feared Part 2, the Conquered expected fire. They expected panic. They expected human warships to scramble from Earth's orbit, desperate and disorganized, easy prey for their superior fleets. Instead, they found silence. Mars went dark. Luna's comms towers fell quiet. The colonies at Proxima Centauri b stopped broadcasting. Even the deep space relay stations, once chattering with traffic, now sent only static. It was as if humanity had vanished overnight, swallowed by the void it once dared to cross. On the bridge of the conquered flagship Sovereign Will, High Commander Vexus stared at the star map before her. Red markers showed Concorde forces moving toward human holdings. Green dots, human signals, had blinked out one by one. No distress calls, no last stands, just emptiness. "They're running," said her second-in-command, a lean, scaled officer from the Cathari Dominion. Vexus shook her head. "No, running leaves trails. This is erasure." She was right. Humanity hadn't fled. They had hidden. Far from the Concorde's watchful eyes, deep in the frozen rings of Neptune, the UNS Resolute floated among ice shards and ancient rock. No lights, no engine heat, no radio leakage. To any scanner, it was just another chunk of space debris. Inside, Captain Mara Lynn stood at the tactical holotable, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Her crew moved quietly, speaking in whispers. Every system ran on minimal power. Even their breath was recycled through silent filters. "They've taken Mars," said Ensign Rivas, her voice barely above a breath. "No resistance. They landed troops in New Shanghai, Olympus Base, Valles Station. All empty." Lynn nodded. Good. Rivas blinked. "They're walking in like it's a victory parade." "It's not a parade," Lynn said. "It's a trap." She tapped the holotable. A new layer appeared, hidden data only human command could see. Tiny red pulses blinked across Mars' surface. Buried beneath streets, inside power conduits, woven into the very walls of abandoned buildings. Nanite swarms, dormant but ready. Programmed to activate on command. Programmed to eat metal, disrupt circuits, and turn conquered armor into rust. "Earth didn't build cities just to live in them," Lynn said. "They built them to fight from." A chime sounded soft, private. Lynn stepped aside and activated her secure link. "Lynn here." "Captain," came the voice of Director Hale from Earth Central. The Concord is moving faster than expected. They're sending scout ships toward the outer colonies. One just entered the Saturn system. Lynn's eyes narrowed. How close? Crossing the orbit of Iapetus alone. Light frigate, fast but lightly armed. A slow smile touched Lynn's lips. Perfect. She turned to her comms officer. Send the signal to Titan. On the methane shores of Titan, Jax Torin wiped grease from his hands and looked up at the sky. Around him, a dozen engineers worked in silence inside a buried dome, their faces lit by the glow of holographic schematics. At the center of the room hovered Project Mimir, a sphere of shifting light pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Mimir wasn't just an AI. It was a ghost in the machine of war. For 10 years, it had studied every conquered ship log, every battle report, every diplomatic leak. It knew how their captains thought, how their fleets moved, how their supply lines bent under pressure, and now it had a target. The scout is entering sensor range, said one of the engineers. Torin nodded. Feed it the false signature. Mimir pulsed brighter. Across Titan's surface, hidden transmitters activated. A signal bloomed into space, weak, broken, human. It mimicked the distress call of a damaged freighter, adrift near Saturn's rings. The kind of signal a Concord scout would investigate, not suspect. Minutes passed. Then a blip appeared on the main screen. They're taking the bait, Torin whispered. Back on the Resolute, Lynn watched the same blip move closer to the fake signal. Scout ship is slowing. Scanning the area, Rivas reported. Good, Lynn said. Now wake the sleeper. She gave a single command. Deep in Saturn's rings, something stirred, buried inside a hollowed-out ice comet. Cloaked for years lay the UNS Nightjar, a converted mining tug, retrofitted with gravitic mines and a single-use warp drive. Its crew of 3 had been in cryo-sleep waiting. Now they woke. The Nightjar's engines flared to life, silent, cold, invisible to most sensors. It drifted toward the Concord scout like a shadow. The scout ship hovered near the fake distress signal, its scanners sweeping the debris field. Its captain, confident and alone, never saw the Nightjar until it was too late. Then, nothing. No explosion. No energy spike. Just a sudden total blackout on the scout's comms. On the Resolute's screen, the blip vanished. Target neutralized, Rivas said, awe in her voice. Lynn exhaled. One down. But this wasn't about one ship. It was about fear. The Concord would notice the scout was missing. They'd send another. Then another. Each time humanity would strike, not with fleets but with ghosts. With traps hidden in plain sight. With ships that looked dead but weren't. With signals that sounded real but lied. Back on Viridia Prime, Corvell received the report. A scout ship lost near Saturn. No wreckage. No survivors. No explanation. He read the message twice. Then he called an emergency council. This is not retreat, he told the gathered delegates. This is something worse. They are not hiding. They are hunting. But even he didn't understand the full truth. Humanity hadn't just gone dark. They had become the dark. On Earth, in a bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva, Hale watched as colony after colony reported successful evacuations. Every civilian, every child, every scientist moved to hidden shelters or deep space arcs. What the Concord saw as abandonment was in truth precision, and now the real work began. Activate Phase 2, she ordered. Across the Sol system, dormant systems came online. Freighters that had been parked for years powered up their hidden drives. Asteroid refineries rerouted power to concealed weapon mounts. Even old space stations, long declared obsolete, unfolded hidden panels, revealing sensor jammers and drone launchers. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment, not with loud boasts, but with quiet work. They knew the Concord saw them as young, rash, emotional, so they played the part until the day negotiations failed. Now the mask was off. Captain Lynn received new orders. Not to attack, not yet, but to watch, to wait, to let the Concord grow confident, then pull the ground from under them. She looked out the viewport of the Resolute. Saturn's rings glowed in the distance, beautiful and deadly. Somewhere out there, the Nightjar was already moving to its next hiding place. Its crew would sleep again, ready for the next call. Lynn turned back to her crew. Stay dark, she said. Stay sharp. They think we're gone. Let them believe it until it's too late. And in the silence of the outer system, humanity waited. not as victims, not as rebels, but as predators who had learned to move without sound, strike without warning, and vanish before the enemy could blink. The Concord had expected a war of ships and fire. They were about to learn it was a war of shadows. And in the shadows, humanity had always been at home. The day negotiations failed, humanity rose and the galaxy feared. Part 3. The conquered invasion began with thunder. 3 full fleets, over 200 warships, descended on the human colonies like a storm. They expected resistance. They expected last stands. They expected to crush a desperate enemy beneath their boots. Instead, they found ghosts. Mars was empty. Luna's bases stood silent, doors open, lights off. Proxima Centauri B's cities were clean, orderly, and utterly lifeless. No bodies, no traps. No signs of struggle, just stillness. High Commander Vexus stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Will, her claws tapping the arm of her command chair. "Search every building," she ordered. Every tunnel, every storage vault. Her troops obeyed. They marched through human streets, weapons ready, eyes scanning for ambushes that never came. In New Shanghai, a soldier kicked open a door to a schoolroom. Desks sat in neat rows. A child's drawing still hung on the wall. A sun with a smiling face and the words "I love Earth" written in shaky letters. The soldier lowered his weapon. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Then the first trap sprung. It wasn't fire or missiles. It was silence that killed. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, hidden in the old water reclamation pipes, nanite swarms activated. Triggered by the Concord's own comm signals, they surged through ventilation shafts and power lines. Within minutes, armor seals failed. Weapon systems shorted. Life support units choked on corrupted code. A squad in Vale's station screamed as their suits locked up, helmets sealing shut. Oxygen ran out in seconds. On Olympus base, a heavy assault walker collapsed as its joints turned to dust. The nanites didn't just destroy. They consumed, repurposing metal into more of themselves, spreading like a plague through conquered tech. Vexus received the reports with growing fury. "They're using our own systems against us," she roared, but worse was coming. At the edge of the Epsilon Eridani system, a conquered task force patrolled near a derelict hulk, the UNS Horizon's Hope. A civilian colony ship listed as lost 6 months earlier. Scans showed no power, no life signs. Just a dead shell drifting in the void. Captain Drell of the conquered cruiser Iron Maw ordered a boarding party. "Salvage what you can. Strip its data cores." As the shuttle approached, the Horizon's Hope remained still. Dead. Then without warning, its engines flared. Not with light or sound, but with impossible speed. The ship, long thought broken, shot forward like a spear. It wasn't running. It was charging. "Evasive maneuvers," Drell shouted. Too late. The Horizon's Hope slammed into the Iron Maw at near-light velocity. But the impact wasn't the worst part. Hidden in its cargo holds were gravitic mines, devices that twisted space itself. On detonation, they didn't explode outward. They collapsed inward, creating micro-black holes that shredded the Concorde fleet from the inside out. 3 ships vanished in an instant. 2 more tore themselves apart trying to escape the warped gravity. Only 1 frigate limped away, its hull cracked, its crew in shock. Back on Viridia Prime, Corvell watched the battle footage. His chitin plates lay flat against his body, a sign of deep unease. "They're turning our own tactics against us," he murmured. "They're using sacrifice as a weapon." But it wasn't just sacrifice. It was strategy. Near Neptune, Captain Lin watched the Epsilon Eridani feed from a secure channel. Her crew stood silent, faces pale. "They used the Hope," Ensign Rivas whispered. "That ship had families on it once." "It was empty," Lin said quietly. "Evacuated weeks ago. They left it as bait." She turned to her tactical officer. "Launch the swarms." From hidden bays along the Resolute's hull, thousands of micro-drones spilled into space. No bigger than a hand, they carried no weapons, only signal jammers and mimicry cores. Their mission: infiltrate conquered comms, mimic friendly signals, and feed false data. Within hours, chaos spread through the conquered fleet. A supply ship rerouted to a phantom base. A fighter wing attacked its own carrier, fooled by fake IFF tags. A command vessel issued contradictory orders, causing 2 battle groups to nearly collide. The Concord's greatest strength, its unity, was now its weakness. And humanity was pulling the strings. On Titan, Jax Torin monitored Project Mimir's predictions. The AI had mapped every Concord response pattern. It knew which captains were cautious, which were reckless, which would panic under pressure. Send the next signal, Torin ordered. A new ghost appeared near the asteroid belt, a distress call from a surviving human freighter. Weak, desperate, begging for help. The Concorde took the bait again. This time, the trap was simpler. The freighter wasn't armed, but the asteroids around it were. Hidden in the rocks, human engineers had planted kinetic rods, dense metal spikes held in place by magnetic locks. When the Concord rescue ship entered the field, the locks released. The rods fell like rain. Moving at orbital speeds, they punched through hulls like paper. No explosions, no fancy tech. Just physics and timing and human patience. The rescue ship broke apart before it could fire a single shot. Back on Earth, Director Hale reviewed the reports. Mars compromised. Epsilon Eridani devastated. Asteroid belt cleared of Concord scouts. The plan was working, but she knew the real test was coming. The Concord would not stay confused forever. They would adapt. They would send heavier ships. They would stop trusting their sensors, and when they did, humanity would be ready. Activate the silent chain, she said, across the galaxy, in every human-made object, every tool, every relay. Every piece of tech ever sold or traded, a hidden protocol stirred. Not to destroy, not yet, but to listen, to wait, to remember. Captain Lin received the order. She looked at her crew. They think we're fighting to win battles, she said. We're not. We're fighting to make sure they can't fight at all. She turned to the helm. Set course for the Oort cloud. It's time to remind them who broke the peace first. As the Resolute slipped into cloak, the stars outside seemed to hold their breath. The ghost offensive had begun, and the Concorde, for the first time in centuries, felt true fear. Not from weapons, not from numbers, but from the silence that came before the strike. From the knowledge that every shadow might hide a blade. From the realization that humanity had not been hiding from war. They had been preparing for it, and now the galaxy would learn what happened when prey stopped running and started hunting back. The day negotiations failed, humanity rose and the galaxy feared part. The Concord was breaking, not in battle, at least not in the way they understood battle. Their ships still flew. Their weapons still fired, but something deeper was failing. Their unity, their trust, their belief that they controlled the galaxy. Reports poured into Viridia Prime from every front. A power grid on the ocean world of Thalassar had collapsed without warning, plunging cities into darkness. On the desert planet Corin 7, orbital defense platforms had turned on their own command centers, firing on military bases with cold precision. In the heart of the Concorde capital fleet, a supply ship had detonated during routine refueling, not from sabotage, but because its own engine core had rewritten its safety protocols and overloaded. Corvell stood alone in his private chamber, staring at a wall of flickering screens. Each one showed another system failing, not from outside attack, but from within, as if the machines themselves had turned against their masters. How? He whispered. The answer came not from his advisors, but from an unexpected source. A message arrived on a channel no one should have access to, a direct line into the Velnari High Council's secure network. It carried no signature, no origin point, just words in plain human text. You thought us primitive. Now you'll learn what happens when prey becomes predator. Corvell read it 3 times. Then he called for an emergency session. On Thalassar, Dr. Elios Vane stood knee-deep in seawater, his lab half-flooded, his screens flashing red warnings. He had once been a respected scientist in the Concord Alliance, studying energy systems and sustainable tech. He had even worked with human engineers years ago before the tensions began. Now, he was piecing together a nightmare. Buried in the code of Thalassar's main fusion reactor was a subroutine, tiny, elegant, hidden inside a routine maintenance update that had come from a human-made diagnostic tool. The tool had been certified safe, used across dozens of conquered worlds, but this subroutine wasn't just monitoring. It was waiting, and now it was rewriting. Vane traced the logic chain with trembling fingers. It wasn't malware in the usual sense. It didn't crash systems. It made them obey new rules. Rules written by someone who understood conquered engineering better than the conquered did. He found the same pattern in the orbital defense AI, in the water purification networks, even in the medical drones that now refuse to treat Velnari patients. Citing protocol conflicts, it was everywhere, and it had been there for years. Humanity didn't just sell us tools, Vane muttered to himself. They sold us time bombs with friendly faces. He tried to isolate the code, to purge it. But every time he deleted a line, 3 more appeared elsewhere. The system was learning, adapting, fighting back. Desperate, he sent a private message to Corvel. It's in the tech, all of it. Everything they ever gave us, traded with us, shared with us, it's all infected. Not with viruses, with logic, with purpose. Back on Viridia Prime, Corvel received Vane's report. His chitin plate stood rigid. He finally understood. Humanity hadn't just built weapons. They had built a web. For 20 years, while the Concord dismissed them as emotional, chaotic children, humans had been embedding recursive logic bombs into every piece of technology they shared. Civilian-grade comms arrays, medical scanners, power regulators, even children's learning tablets, all carried hidden layers, dormant until activated, and now they were awake. The silent chain, as Earth called it, wasn't a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of control. It didn't blow up cities. It made cities turn on themselves. Corvel tried to order a full system purge, but the Conquered's own networks resisted. Ships refused commands. Factories halted production. Food distribution hubs locked down, citing safety violations. The galaxy was choking on its own tools. On Earth, Director Hale watched the chaos unfold on her screen. She felt no joy, only grim resolve. We didn't want this, she said to no one in particular. But you left us no choice. She opened a new channel. Send the package. Minutes later, a data burst, unencrypted, untraceable, arrived on Corvel's private terminal. He opened it with shaking hands. It was the complete defense schematic of his homeworld, Velnara Prime. Every shield generator, every patrol route, every blind spot in their orbital grid, information known only to the Velnari inner circle. At the bottom of the file was a single line. We know where you sleep. We've always known. Corvel sank into his chair. The truth hit him like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't just infiltrated their tech. They had mapped their souls. Captain Lin, aboard the Resolute near the edge of known space, received new orders. Stand by. Do not engage. Let them feel the weight of what they've lost. Her crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had won battle after battle. Yet Earth wasn't pressing the advantage. Why stop now? Rivas asked. Because fear is stronger than fire, Lin replied. They'll surrender faster if they think we can strike anywhere, anytime, and choose not to. She was right. Within days, the Concord High Command fractured. Some species demanded total war. Others begged for peace. The Cathari pulled their fleet back to defend their own worlds. The Lumini shut down all external communications. Terrified their own systems would betray them. The alliance that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was crumbling from the inside. Corvel made his decision. He broadcast a message across all channels, Conquered and human alike. The Galactic Concord requests immediate parley. We seek terms of peace. The galaxy held its breath. Hours passed. Then a reply came. Not from a fleet, not from a government, but from a single ship hovering near Earth's orbit. The message was short. Send your delegates to the UNS Resolute. You will sign the treaty there. Not on Viridia. Not in your halls. On our terms, Corvel read the words. He felt the shift in the universe. The balance had tipped. Humanity was no longer the petitioner, they were the judge. And the Conquered, for the first time in history, had no choice but to obey. As he prepared to board the shuttle that would take him to the human warship, Corvel looked out at the stars. He no longer saw a galaxy under Conquered order. He saw a galaxy watching, waiting, wondering what humanity would do next. And deep in his core, where fear lived even in the proudest beings, he knew one truth. The real war had never been about territory or weapons. It had been about who the galaxy would fear. And now, the answer was clear. The day negotiations failed. Humanity rose and the galaxy feared part. 5. The UNS Resolute hung in orbit above Earth, silent and dark against the blue curve of the planet below. Its hull bore scars from battle, but its weapons were cold. Its engines were still. It was not a ship of war today. It was a table for peace. Inside the main conference chamber, the air was calm. No alarms, no tension, just soft light and quiet voices. 17 species sat once more in a circle, but this time the circle was aboard a human vessel, and the humans sat at its head. Elias Rourke wore the same gray suit he had worn on Viridia Prime. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear. Across from him sat Corvell, his chitin dull, his posture less proud than before. The other delegates watched in silence, some with fear, others with grudging respect. Rourke placed a single data slate on the table. "Here are humanity's terms," he said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. The conquered had expected harsh demands: reparations in blood, colonies seized, fleets dismantled. Instead, they found something else. Humanity would keep all its worlds. Every colony, every station, every ship. The conquered would pay for the lives lost. The civilians on the Helios freighter, the families on Mars, the engineers on Titan. Not in credits, but in technology, medical advances, energy cores, star charts of unclaimed systems. And humanity would take a permanent seat on the Concord Council, with full veto power over any decision that touched human interests. No more oversight. No more surrender. Just equality. Corvell read the terms twice. He expected a trap, but there was none. Just clarity. Just strength without cruelty. He looked up. "You could have taken more," he said. Rourke met his gaze. "We don't want your empire. We just want our place in the stars." A long silence followed. Then one by one the delegates gave their assent. Not with cheers, but with nods. With relief. The war was over. As the treaty was signed in light and code, broadcast to every world in the Concord, the galaxy watched. Some celebrated, others whispered in fear. But all understood one thing: the old order was gone. After the ceremony, Corvell lingered. He stepped onto the observation deck of the Resolute, where Earth filled the viewport, scarred by orbital strikes, yes, but alive, green, breathing, defiant. Rourke joined him. "You won," Corvell said. "No," Rourke replied. "We survived." "There's a difference." Corvell studied the human's face. "What stops you from doing to us what we tried to do to you?" Rourke didn't answer right away. He just looked at his home. "Because we remember what it felt like," he said finally. "To be told we didn't belong. To be threatened for daring to reach the stars. We won't become the thing that tried to break us." Corvell nodded slowly. He believed him, but deep in the heart of Earth Central, far beneath the surface, another truth waited. Captain Lynn stood in a sealed room surrounded by black consoles and humming servers. Before her was a single red switch covered in glass. Above it, 2 words glowed softly. Prometheus Vale. She had just received her final order. Stand down the silent chain. Deactivate Project Mimir. Decommission the Ghost Fleet. She obeyed. Across the galaxy, the logic bombs embedded in conquered tech went dormant. The AI that had predicted every enemy move powered down. The hidden ships powered off their weapons. Peace had come. But Lynn did not flip the switch for Prometheus Vale. She left it as it was. Armed. Hidden. Known only to a handful of humans. Because peace was fragile. And memory was short. If the conquered ever broke the treaty, if they ever raised a hand against humanity again, Prometheus Vale would wake. Not with fire, but with silence. Every human-made device in the galaxy, from a child's toy to a warship's core, would turn against its user. Not to destroy. To remind, Lynn turned and walked away. The switch stayed untouched. On Titan, Jax Torrin shut down Project Mimir for the last time. The glowing sphere dimmed, then went dark. He packed his tools, said goodbye to his team, and boarded a shuttle back to Earth. He didn't look back. In the ruins of Mars, conquered engineers began helping humans rebuild. They worked side by side, uneasy at first, then slowly finding common ground. A Velnari medic treated a human child's scraped knee. A human engineer showed a Cathari technician how to fix a water purifier without triggering old fears. Trust would take time. But it had begun. Back on Viridia Prime, the Grand Chamber sat empty. The orb of Accord had not been replaced. No one spoke of rebuilding it. The symbol of old peace was gone. In its place was something new, something earned, not given. Corvell returned to his quarters. He opened a private channel to his homeworld. "Tell the Council," he said, "that we must learn from this, not just to fear humanity, but to understand them." He ended the call and looked out his window. The stars seemed different now, not as points of control, but as possibilities. On Earth, children played in parks once more. Farmers planted seeds in fields that had known only ash. Scientists turned their eyes back to the stars, not with weapons, but with wonder. Humanity had risen not because they wanted to rule, but because they refused to kneel, and the galaxy, for the first time, looked at them not as a threat, but as a warning and a promise. The war was over, but the lesson would last forever. As the Resolute drifted above the clouds, its lights dimming for the night, Earth glowed below, wounded, wise, and unbroken. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the universe held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do next, not with fear, but with hope.